So then tonight I was listening to something on the radio while I was in the car, and it was two men talking about um, their fathers did not live in the home, and they were, I don't know, it sounded like they were probably around 10 years old, maybe. I'm guessing at that. These two boys did not know each other, but each of their dads had promised them something. One promised he would bring him a certain thing that he really wanted. Another dad promised his child that he was going to take him out for ice cream in his really cool car. And I guess he was going to take his friends too. In both scenarios, the dads never came through with that. They the boys were just absolutely devastated, felt that they'd been lied to by their dad. And one of them said in the program that he said, right then and there, I developed a hardness about that. I can so identify. My dad would promise, he would coerce me to come and spend the weekend with he and his wife. I did not want to do that. I had a happy place right there with my mom, and I did not want to go and spend a weekend with the guy who had stirred up everything and caused the abuse in our home. What in the world is the joy in that? And so I didn't want to go, but he'd say, okay, well, I'll be there at this particular time on Friday. And I would wait sometimes 2 and 3 hours, and he still hadn't shown up. And that did a major number on me. And we were talking about this before we started recording. If you can take that scenario, and how could that carry over into a future marriage, for example?
You don't believe somebody when they tell you they're going to do something? Mm-hmm. Expectations are dangerous, especially in a marital situation. Because if one person says, I'm going to do this, and then they don't, it begins to chip away at the other person's ability to trust. The healthiest relationships on the planet are relationships founded in trust. Mm-hmm. So it chips away at that. But what that taught you, even at that age, was, so I saw this person do all this bad stuff in my household. Now this person, though, decides they want to spend time with me. So as a child, even though you saw the chaos that was caused, it's still your dad. And so there's still a part of you that still wants to spend time with your dad. There's a part of you that doesn't want to spend time with your dad. So no, those two pieces are arguing with each other. I don't want to spend time with him. He destroyed our home, or he causes chaos, or he makes me nervous, or whatever it is. That's my dad, though. He wants to spend time with me, so I want to spend time with him. So you got that inner battle going on in your childhood self, your childlike self. So then the expectation is, now he says he's going to do this, and then he doesn't show up. So what has he communicated? First of all, he's communicated he's a liar, because he told you that he would and he didn't. But I think as a child, the worst part of that communication was, you're not worth my time. I told you I'd spend time with you, but really when I thought about it, you're not worth my time, because if you were worth my time, I would come and get you. Mm-hmm. And a child who is repeatedly told, hey, I'll do this, and it doesn't happen, begins to devalue themselves. Ooh. Because if you really wanted to, you would. Even at the crisis center, one of the things I always tell new advocates and continuing advocates forever, don't tell somebody you're going to do something if you're really not going to do it. Don't set up those false expectations. The person living in an abusive environment has lived with false expectations the entire time. If you don't believe me, at the essence of the relationship, someone who says they love you is someone who hurts you. That's the foundation of your relationship. So you can't believe that person, but then it really does chip away at the self-worth. So then as the child gets older, the child is faced with a dilemma. Do I act like this person? Because every time dad says, I'm going to do this with you, I feel good because dad wants to do something for me. So should I always tell people yes? Should I become that people pleaser and tell them yes because it feels good? Then you have to remember, how bad does it feel though when the expectation isn't followed through on? Are we teaching our kids to be liars?
Yeah.
We could be.
Yeah.
But we're also teaching them that they're not valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You're not worth my time. If you were worth my time, I would make sure that I honored what I said I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I would venture to guess that those two men, when they're talking about their 10-year-old selves, walked away with a message that I'm not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping, as you were listening to the podcast, that as they've gotten older, they've learned how to value themselves. But
Mm-hmm.
it's possible they haven't. If nothing has come along to challenge that in their lives, they may still be those 10-year-old boys feeling not worth it. So they need people in their lives that would say, I'm going to, and then do it.
So that's
Especially little kids. That's so damaging to a little kid.
awful. It's awful. It messed me up something big. So it doesn't have to even be somebody in the family that would reinforce and encourage that kid.
Mm-hmm.
It could be
Exactly.
okay.
You could have a teacher who takes an interest in you because you're in science club, and the teacher says, hey, if your mom will let you stay after school for 30 minutes every night, I'll work on this thing with you, and then does it. So then that child learns, okay, well, I'm valuable to my teacher because
Mm-hmm.
my teacher's willing to do this. I wish my dad did. I mean, that's what a kid's going to think.
Yep.
So who do you think that kid's going to go to then when that kid has a crisis? The teacher or the dad?
Teacher,
The dad's not trustworthy.
right?
We teach our kids really, we can teach our kids really damaging things about trust. Trust is hard enough to build when you're not coming out of an abusive situation.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have all of those broken promises, etc., it's really challenging to build.
And I had heard years ago that trust is literally the foundation that every single relationship is built on, whether it's your coworker, yeah, whether it's your coworker, your neighbor, your spouse, it doesn't matter. Excuse me, asthma. Um, but that you've got to keep that. Once that is shattered, broken, it, it's really hard to rebuild that trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that because I stayed for over 20 years after, and I bet you most of our audience could too, could give us examples of, but I stayed because I kept thinking it would get better.
Mm-hmm.
It did not, it never got repaired. That trust was broken, shattered into a million pieces, turned into sand, blew away in the wind,
Mm-hmm.
never got rebuilt.
Yeah.
So then what do I do? What would you say to that person?
Well, if you don't trust that person, you probably don't need to be with them anyway. I mean, that's the foundation of your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? You've heard me say this before. How you build trust? Same way you get into a hot bathtub.
A little bit at a time to try it
A
out.
little bit at a time. You don't just jump in boiling hot water and it feels good.
Mm-mm.
But if you slowly sink down into it, toe by toe, you
Yeah.
get used to it and you're like, okay, this water is not so bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same way you learn how to trust people. I don't, you know, as I've grown up over the years, I don't initially think that we should just trust people because they tell us that we can.
Right.
We can give them a semblance of trust and then see what they do with it. And if what they do with it is good to us, I mean, that felt good, I'll give you a little bit more. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we should ever blindly trust anybody. I just had this conversation with an employee the other day where a light bulb had gone off in her head, and she said, it never dawned on me And I found it interesting because she's worked for me for quite a while. But she said it never dawned on me that when a new person comes in to stay at the crisis center and we do our intake where we ask about their situation, we're expecting them to blindly trust us. Why would they trust us? I said, exactly. Why would they trust us? Why? Back to my old counselor statement that I make all of the time. When you go to a counselor for the first time, why do you want to help me? Just because you're a counselor doesn't mean I should walk in and blindly trust you. Just because you're a doctor doesn't mean I should walk in and blindly trust you. Just because you're an attorney, just because you're a pastor doesn't mean I should walk in and blindly trust you.
Yeah.
Give a semblance of trust and see what they do with it. But especially someone coming out of an abusive situation, they've learned not to trust. So why would they want to share the intimate details of their life with a complete stranger?
Yeah.
Would you like to share the intimate details of your life with a complete stranger?
I didn't really want to when I came in the shelter. I felt bad enough that I couldn't make it on my own, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't
Mm-hmm.
couldn't successfully stay in a marriage that I
Yeah.
wanted, you know. So no, it was very humiliating,
Mm-hmm.
actually.
So then let me ask you this, as you went through your time in shelter and as you were transitioning out of shelter, did you trust your primary advocate?
Oh yes. Eventually we had had enough conversations, and she was so good about listening and then giving me things that would help, services and whatever that I might need, or guidance of, well, now don't forget you also need to do this when you apply for this help, or when you go to sign up to pay your electric bill, sign up for that, those kind of things. And she became literally someone I could very easily trust.
So what happened was you trusted her with a few things and she showed you that she was trustworthy. So you trust her with a few more. She
Mm-hmm.
continued to reinforce that. You
Yeah.
trusted her with a few more. And so you walked away from that saying, that's a person I can trust.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
on day one, if she would have said, you have to tell me everything and I'm going to tell you what to do, how would that have been?
I The smart thing would have been to walk out the door, because I didn't need another person to control me.
Exactly.
Who
Yeah,
didn't she had no need to know everything that had happened and everything that was in my mind.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So it does take time. It's funny too, because we expect our children to do that with their teachers.
Oh,
We
that's
expect our
true.
children to walk into the classroom for the first time and have the utmost respect for our teacher because they're our teacher.
That's good, Becky.
Why would I trust them? I don't even know them. And my whole life, my mom has told me to beware of strangers.
There you
Now I'm
go.
spending all of this time and I don't even know this person. Like we give so many mixed messages to our kids when we're raising them. Do I think teachers are bad? No. But do I think that you should look at them and be like, oh, I trust you completely? No. Maybe someday you will, but why do we do that?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's really good.
Or when parents take their children to counselors because they feel like their kid needs somebody to talk to, then we expect them to completely trust that counselor. Why would they?
Yeah.
If you just met this person for the first time today, why would you want to be like, yeah, let me tell you all my stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do that, and I'm 53 years old. So why would a child want to do that?
Yeah, good
Those
point.
are things I think we need to pay attention to.
Well, and first of all, just think about it. You always give us so much to think about, things that I've never heard before, or reminding me of things that I need to think about again that I'd forgotten that you'd said. And there's so much rich stuff that comes out of these recordings. I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You talked about, well, maybe, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, about broken expectations. I think you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expectations are such a dangerous thing. We set ourselves up. We set ourselves up for failure a lot of times with our expectations. Sometimes our expectations aren't even realistic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in an equal partnership relationship, we have to be careful that our expectations are something. If we haven't communicated to our partner, this is my expectation, and then they don't achieve it, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
I never told you it was my expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So why am I having that expectation? She's dreaming like crazy over there.
I know. She's just really going crazy.
Chasing rabbits or something.
Yeah, I think she is. She saw a squirrel earlier today and a cat. So maybe that's what she's dreaming about. She actually got a hold of it.
It might be. Like even in our adult relationships, broken expectations are hard to process. And so, it's compounded with a younger child. The men you were talking about as boys,
Mm-hmm.
they just so desperately wanted that attention. We need to get better at teaching our children that it's okay to voice your expectations too.
That's good. What
You do it when somebody starts a new job. What's one of the first things the new employer does? They sit down and they go through the handbook or the policy manual or procedures or whatever. That's the employer's expectations. So if you're going to succeed here, this is what I expect.
right.
We do that at work. Why don't we do that on our wedding day or before
Mm-hmm.
we get married? Hey, this is my expectations for a spouse.
Right. Mine were too unrealistic. And it took me a while to really see that. So my expectations were Disney and, all of their little fluffy dreams that are all done in color and everything gets resolved in an hour, or 2 hour movie, whatever. Um,
Right.
yeah. So mine were unrealistic, which did not help in the marriage at all. And I acknowledge that. Um, and my expectations for my kids, I had not been around children. So I expected them to be little miniature adults. Where did that come from? It didn't work either, by the way.
Yeah.
That added more to my frustration, which did not help matters any.
Yeah.
So those expectations are huge.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I've had my own battles over the years with my expectations, and my expectations have gotten me in trouble a couple of times because either I didn't communicate it or the person that I expected was just not capable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, that really does play into relationships as well. Is that person capable? They may not be. And in an abusive situation, they're going to tell you they are.
Of
But
course.
someone who's not motivated by that power and control honestly just may not be incapable. Honestly, may just be incapable.
Mm-hmm. For that particular job, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or that task or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow. Girl, this has been good tonight. It's been really, really good. Folks, please feel free to post your questions. And again, even if we did read yours, we would not read your name along with it. We would not attach the two. If you want to have it just remain anonymous, we can do that. You can reach out to us by email, Facebook Messenger. Um, so feel free to reach out to us with questions and make sure that you like, subscribe, all the YouTube things to do.
Another thing that would be exciting for me is if when people comment, they would comment on topics they'd like us to talk about as well.
Ooh, that would be good. Because, folks, sometimes we are just scratching in thin air trying to, come up with what are we going to do next. Even though, I mean, we have not really straight away. We're not using the book at the moment, the training guides that Becky helped develop, but sometimes we just need something fresh. So feel free to do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
Then we're meeting our viewers' expectations.
There you go. Yeah, because we want to help you with, just like Becky is helping me process, through what I've been through, and I'm sure she's helping you as well. Yeah, we want to be able to help you. So reach out with whatever you're going through that you need direction or whatever. And remember, please, that no matter where you are in this process, you're always free to soar.